have no problem driving across the valley to talk about water, which is my area of expertise. So my name's Amy. I am the environmental manager for the City of Surprise for their water and wastewater utilities. And just through relationships and friend of a friend type thing, I've done a couple of sort of big picture water talks for a couple of the other My Home Group offices. So I think this is like my third time kind of speaking to this type of audience about water resources in Arizona. So my goal is to help give you guys some information about kind of Arizona's water supply situation, and hopefully it's relevant to you as real estate agents who are in the market of selling homes to folks who are moving here from everywhere, and they're all wondering if we're going to rent out. Yes. And so that's the big question, right? Should I buy a house there? I actually have had a handful of calls from people to me directly asking, hey, my nephew's thinking about moving to Surprise, and I'm just really worried about the water situation. Can you talk to me about that? And so I have no problem, having that conversation. I think what you'll get out of my presentation is, yes, we have real challenges. There's no denying that. But we're not at that place yet where it's like day zero is coming and we can calculate down to the hour. That's not what's happening. So that means we have time to put solutions in place to help us with our very real water challenges. And they're not easy, and you'll learn why. So as we're kind of going through this, feel free to ask questions. That's what I'm here for. We have an hour. I really don't want to bore you with an hour of talking. So if it can be conversational, that would be great. I do enjoy that. And I kind of prepared this presentation really thinking big picture about the state. So I have a lot of knowledge about the Phoenix area in particular. So you'll start to see, we're going to sort of hone in on the area that we're in right now. But we'll start kind of big picture with the state, if that's okay. Sound good?
Yeah.
Cool. So I'll share about some water supplies in Arizona, water use patterns, some of the limitations on the different water supplies we have available to us, and then some of the solutions that are currently being worked on, because that's ultimately what we want to know, right? That's what I want to know. Okay, so because I work in water, and I always forget to do this is like the first slide I put up here. Oftentimes when we're talking about water resources, we're talking about really, really big volumes of water in the trillion gallons, because we're talking about water that's serving the 8 million people that live in Arizona, right? So you may hear me use the term or the unit, refer to units in acre feet. So in the water resources world, we refer to we have this many acre feet of water we can serve. And an acre foot is just a unit of measurement. It amounts to about 300,000 gallons. It is the amount of water that would cover an acre 1 foot deep. So that's what it's referring to. So imagine an acre and 1 foot of water, that's an acre foot. And that you'll probably start to see those numbers get thrown around on my slides, and that's what that means. So in Arizona, we do have multiple water supplies available to us. About a third of our water comes from the Colorado River. So that's probably not a surprise to anybody. Has anybody ever read an article or heard something on the news about the Colorado River? Hopefully yes, 100%, everybody. It's in the news all the time because it is a water source that our whole state is really reliant on. And fun fact, because it's all, everybody's always like, well, who should have the water, who should get it? Fun fact, Arizona is the only state that I think all of Arizona is physically located in the Colorado River Basin versus some of the other states, a portion of the land mass. So I like to throw that out there that people see us as importing water, but it's actually it forms two borders of our state. We're importing it just from there to here. It's totally normal. So we also have groundwater available to us. That's another huge resource. It's, you know, essentially the valley was built on groundwater. And we'll get into what the protections are in place so that we don't run out of groundwater. That's a huge part of how we manage water in the Phoenix area in particular, is by protecting our groundwater so we don't run out. This chart says that only 5% of our water resources in Arizona are brought in or used by reclaimed water, supplied by reclaimed water, sorry. In the valley, that's quite a bit more. And that's simply because we don't have a lot of rivers where we can treat wastewater and then discharge it to, so we tend to keep it. And we have mechanisms in place where we can actually replenish the aquifer with it. So in the Phoenix area, that percentage is probably a lot bigger because we really do use a lot of our treated effluent to support the aquifer.
I have a quick question about
Yeah.
the groundwater. How do you protect it when you can't, I mean, we can't reclaim any groundwater, like if you sprinkle water, you know, your lawn,
Yeah.
there's no reclamation of that.
Yeah, good point. And we'll get into that next. I think that's kind of where my next slide heads. But one of the biggest ways that we protect groundwater is by we have essentially a moratorium on groundwater. It's really been in place since 1980, and that's the Groundwater Management Act is kind of a lot of the laws regulating water use in the Phoenix area are based on that, trying to reduce the amount of new groundwater pumping we allow. And the way that we do that is actually by replenishing the aquifer when we do pull out. So it doesn't mean that groundwater isn't being used. It's just that it's being used and then it's being replenished using our renewable supplies. So that's a really good question. That's the number one strategy to kind of keep the aquifer, that we call it safe yield. It's like you're keeping it balanced. If I take out a gallon, I'm going to put a gallon back. And that is how Surprise operates its utility entirely. Like all of our water, drinking water in Surprise comes from wells, groundwater wells. So we have like 19 wells sprinkled throughout the city. It's like straws in the ground, and we're just pumping up water and serving it to customers. But we then treat our wastewater and we will put it into percolation basins, so it just percolates back into the soil, and so that keeps all of our water levels the same.
Okay.
So yeah, that is largely how most utilities are managing their supplies in Phoenix.
There is a lot of building going on out there. So do you have a limit on?
We do.
Yeah, okay.
We do. So yeah, I will get to that as well.
Shut up and let you talk.
No, these are good questions. Really good questions. So that lets me know that I can skip the boring stuff and get a little bit more technical with you guys. So this graphic is really just showing over the whole state how water is being used. So it's important to recognize that while there may be a lot of eyes on our large population in Phoenix, only 22% of the use is coming from the municipal side. So
that's my favorite song.
that was beautiful. Thank you for the serenade. It's the first time for me. So water conservation, it's really easy to like point fingers and be like, point my finger at him. It's really easy to point fingers at Phoenix. We do get this regionally, like upper basin states have a tendency to point at like all the golf courses we have here and like, oh my God, there's so many golf courses, but they don't actually, they're not actually responsible for most of the use. And a lot of them are using reclaimed wastewater. So we do have a perception issue in Arizona.
There's too many holes in the dam.
There's what?
Too many holes in the dam. Hi, I'm going to build an 11-acre pool at Westgate. Is that okay? Sure. You're going to use reclaimed water? No, that's gross. We're just going to stick another straw in the ground. It's fine. Don't worry. Everybody keeps sticking more straws in the ground. We do not have infinite supply. I have paid to have a well drill before. I know how nerve-wracking it is.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
subsidence, the ground sinking, well, that's kind of a real thing. That's because we are taking out
It
way
is.
more than we're putting in, and we pretend that we have enough to last forever. All that water that's down below that bedrock, that's over $1 billion to get to. We're never gonna get to that. We're just gonna keep going with what you say. We're gonna keep trying to put some in, take some out, and then, okay. They'll get 99% of the bad stuff out of the water, you know, the chip plant up northeast of me, don't worry. It's like the rat droppings in your syrup. How many parts per million is okay with you? I'm hoping for 0.
So like I mentioned,
So, I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, but like, the water thing,
yeah,
there's too many unregulated people that were entities
Right.
that can just take. And agricultural used to be very productive here. Supima, Pima Road, yeah. Now it's massive and it's not to us.
Yeah.
Nothing's to us. It's
so
all.
what questions do you have?
My question is, what are we or what can we do
What can we do?
to try and regulate those unregulated sources now to stop them from taking as much as they want?
Okay, we will get there. I promise. Stay on the train with me.
Homeowners are
I hope
some
so.
of the biggest waste of water.
Everybody uses water, and every industry needs water. And so all that we are really trying to do is make sure that each of the users is using it as efficiently as possible. But you're right, we all have a part
Yeah.
in using it responsibly. So one of the benefits in the Phoenix area is we have access to SRP supplies that come through the Salt River system, the Salt and Verity system. This is a great water resource for us to be able to rely on if we face a Colorado River shortage in the next year and the years following. One of the limitations, though, to this SRP supply is that its service area is really bounded to pretty much east of the Agua Fria River. So mostly Phoenix, east side of Phoenix. It's not really available to the West Valley at all. And that's because the history of the SRP system, it was providing water to agriculture in that area. And so the water rights that are associated with SRP are tied to the historical lands where they were being used. So you can't just apply for a water right because you want that water. If there wasn't any historical use of SRP water, like Surprise could not get that supply, just because we have people to serve. So that's a limitation. Not every water provider has access to SRP. A lot of them do. Phoenix does. So it is providing a pretty big water source to the Phoenix Valley in general. When we look at how many of the cities are supported by SRP supplies. So that is another one we have in addition to the Colorado River. So yeah, here's the doom and gloom of the Colorado River. So this slide is really just showing our current system contents. It's probably not new information that the Colorado River is really stressed right now and that we're not having a good snowpack year in the upper basin, Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming. And so when we don't have good snow in those states, we don't tend to have good runoff in the Colorado River. So this slide is prepared by the Central Arizona Project. They manage the canal that serves us. And these little teacups are showing you the current system contents in relation to if that lake were full. And so right now Lake Mead is 34% full and Lake Powell is 25% full. And our basin snowpack is doing very, very poorly this year. So that's one issue, is the actual supply itself is stressed. And then the other issue with Colorado River is we have a kind of the rules for how we manage the river, the way it's operated. That was a 20-year agreement that all the states agreed to in 2007. And so it's 2026, so that agreement expires at the end of this year. So the river is stressed, and the rules we have been operating under obviously haven't been sufficient because we're still seeing less and less water in the river every year. And the rules to operate the river are expiring, and we can't agree on how to move forward. So we can talk about this if anybody has questions. This is an area that I'm currently tracking very, very closely. because it is the supply for Surprise that is most stressed right now, and we have to be able to plan for the future in anticipation of seeing a shortage to our supply.
I mean, a question for you, and I assure you this is not political. But at a certain point, the buck had to stop somewhere with one of our governors. One of our governors screwed the pooch on this Colorado thing, and now California's just gonna rape our water supply.
That's actually not how I see it. Politically speaking, currently the battle is between Colorado and the lower basin. So historically, they're kind of,
California?
California's been an ally to us in the last couple of years.
Really?
Yeah, it's surprising, because we are famous in Arizona for having decades-long battles with California that are, it's all rooted in Colorado River rights and the establishment of those rights from 100 years ago. And so yeah, it's surprising that actually California has been an ally to us right now. And in the sense that they have Arizona, California, and Nevada in the last couple of years have come up with an agreement to conserve some very large amounts of water on the river on an annual basis in order to get the upper basin states to come to the table and agree to a negotiated solution. And so California has been very helpful in telling that story as well, and telling that story.
Are we past that negotiation stage and now it's gotta go to arbitration or something?
I'm not sure if it'll go to arbitration. It could, but yes, we are past the deadline that the states had to negotiate an outcome. And so at this point, what will likely happen is the federal government, the Bureau of Reclamation will decide how the river will be operated, which is unfortunate.
What about the smelt, the silver smelt? I think that they're diverting the water and just flowing it into the river instead of it going to the farmers and to save the silver smelt because they're endangered species.
So I'm not an expert on that, but there amongst the layers of agreements for states and their water rights entitlements, there's also some Endangered Species Act requirements that have to be managed in conjunction with how we manage the river. So that's just it is another layer of what we have to balance when we're operating the river. I say we, I'm not operating the river, the Bureau is. But yeah, that is another layer that they have to consider because of Endangered Species Act requirements. So yeah, so definitely some really real complex challenges.
I mean, I was a little confused on how California's an ally to us.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Because it's my understanding that everything that's coming due in 2027, which is the 20-year thing or whatever.
Yeah.
That the negotiations were somehow somebody in Arizona missed something, and then California was then capitalizing on whatever it was. Like it's like missing a date. Nothing like that
Not
happened.
accurate, but there may be the glimmer of truth that might be accurate is sort of the history of Arizona's entitlements. So the history of like Arizona getting our 2.8 million acre feet of Colorado River water. So back in 1922, there was, I think it started with the Boulder Canyon Project Act, which authorized Hoover Dam. And so that's where the federal government basically doled out the pie. It was like, you get this, da da da. And Arizona was concerned that California was growing really fast and that they wouldn't get enough water. There were plenty of concerns. They were concerned about the water rights to the Gila, which flows through Arizona. So that was a big point of contention, was we want all the rights to the Gila, we shouldn't have to share that. And so Arizona didn't ratify that first act. And then eventually Arizona sued California over the uses of water. So there's lots of history where California, because Arizona wasn't using its full entitlement, California was using more than its entitlement, but in the law of the river, they're allowed to, because that's how the settlement worked out. And so then Arizona was like, okay, we're gonna start using all our water then. And that's when Arizona got really into underground storage of their renewable supplies. So that piece connects. So we're going to store our water in the aquifer, and then store it for future uses. And we've been doing that for decades. We've never had to draw on those stored supplies yet, so that's what we're facing right now. So we'll probably have to pull that back out. But that was a solution to California using more than their entitlement.
And losing.
And right, exactly.
It was
So
an agricultural thing, right?
what's that?
It was an agricultural use thing, correct, with California?
Yeah, so the Imperial Irrigation District has a very, very large legal entitlement to Colorado River water. And with water rights, surface water particularly, a court will recognize your water right with a date attached to it. So if your water right is older than mine, I can't impact your water right, which is great if you have the priority water right. You are protected by law, and you can actually call, they call it a compact call, when you say, hey, this person is, upstream of me, but they have a newer water right, and I'm not getting the diversions I used to. So that's kind of the basis for water rights law and how that all functions together. It's super complex.
Is population part of the equation?
In terms of what?
How much water?
Not in terms of how entitlements were, like water rights are doled out. Typically not. Typically you don't like petition for a water right.
Should it be though, with as much as Arizona's growing population-wise?
Well, to be perfectly
that's
honest.
an opinion question, I don't.
Yeah, it
You
is.
should let her do her thing and then ask questions after.
Okay.
Happy to continue. So Colorado River surface water rights, that's a whole complex. We could spend days talking about that. And then on the other flip side, we've got another supply available to us, and that's our groundwater, which we started talking about at the beginning as well. So Arizona, Central Arizona specifically, our history was doing lots of farming and pumping in the Central Valley in the 50s. And then we started to see subsidence issues. And water levels in wells, like wells going dry. And so there was this recognition at the state level that we're starting to see real issues in our aquifer because of overpumping, and we need to put some protections in place. So in 1980, the Groundwater Management Act was passed. It is probably, I believe it is the first groundwater, body of law, groundwater regulations to be passed in the country. So Arizona has actually been a leader in something that California only just put in place in 2012. So I do like to brag about how we're better than California. That's fun. We're still friendly. It's all good. So a lot of people don't know that. Again, I don't think we're great about telling our water story and celebrating some of the successes. So the Groundwater Management Act, what it did was it established some areas where the most pumping was already occurring, and where they were seeing the biggest subsidence, biggest groundwater level declines. And it would establish that, this is a basin watershed, it would establish that watershed for protection. So Phoenix obviously was already pretty populated in 1980. And so we were one of the first active management areas to be established as part of that Groundwater Management Act. And so once an AMA is established, now water use is more tightly controlled. So one thing that came out of the Groundwater Management Act was no new groundwater pumping. So if you were already pumping groundwater, you could get an irrigation grandfathered right to continue. And that's why we still see agriculture in the Central Valley today, because they have irrigation grandfathered rights. But if you didn't have an irrigation grandfathered right, then you couldn't just pump from the aquifer. You can't just do that. And so the municipalities, for instance, have been able to grow and grow and grow since 1980. How do we do that? We either use surface water as our drinking water supply, so the SRP water, the Colorado River water, or we use renewable supplies to replenish the aquifer like I mentioned before. So those are kind of the two options that you have. a lot of the West Valley doesn't have access to surface water. There's no river free flowing through the West Valley. So the West Valley was an area that was struggling to grow for a long time because they didn't have renewable supplies to be able to rely on. And so if they're going to rely on groundwater, how do we do that? And so that's how the Central Arizona Groundwater Replenishment District was created. CAGRID is the acronym. Is anybody familiar with that? Okay, has anybody ever looked at their property tax bill on their home?
Not lately.
You're probably paying, you're gonna see on your property tax, under the special taxing districts, you'll see CAGRD. If you are living in an area like the West Valley where you're not served by a designated water provider. So you probably wouldn't see that on your tax bill if you are, if your water provider is Scottsdale, Phoenix, Gilbert, Chandler. But if you live in Buckeye, you probably see that tax on your bill. And so the CAGRD, C-A-G-R-D, was established to do the aquifer replenishment on behalf of those utilities that didn't have a designation of assured water supply, or they didn't have access to those renewable supplies to do the replenishment. So all that means is a special taxing district was established that's responsible for replenishing the aquifer on behalf of all of the subdivisions in Phoenix, which is a great thing for all of us. And so that gives the residents and homeowners their consumer protection to know you're not going to have the rug pulled out from you in 10 years and, oh crap, we ran out of water, because your provider has demonstrated that they have the ability to supply a certain volume of water for a certain number for 100 years. Okay, I think earlier someone was asking about how much water. So a question about how much water can you provide? So most of our water providers in the Phoenix area have what's called a designation of assured water supply. And this is the 100-year water certificate. So are you guys familiar with the certificates, cause versus a designated provider? Okay. So that program was established out of the Groundwater Management Act as well, but it didn't come into play until probably early 90s. And so the choice that you have is, if you're going to subdivide any land in the Phoenix area, in that whole watershed, you have to either prove that there's 100 years worth of water to serve that subdivision, or get a will-serve letter from a provider who has done that work on your behalf. So for the developer, the home builder community, this is huge. They typically want to build their homes in a designated provider area because it takes the onus off of them to have to do all that legwork. And they're not water rights experts, So yeah, right. And so it puts the responsibility on the water provider to do all of the water planning responsibly to make sure that we have enough supply to go around. So I'll use Surprise as an example. We're a designated provider. So we have a designation that allows us legally to serve 24,000 acre feet a year within our service area. And because we're a growing city, we're not built out yet. We're only serving about 11,000 acre feet so far. So we have access to 24, not just access. The requirements for the designations are you have to have physical availability. You have to physically be able to access the water. You have to have legal availability, so you've got to own the water right, not just like a pie in the sky thing, which we're working on it. And then legally, physically, continuously. So continuously is the one I think that really matters right now, because our renewable surface water supplies were always seen as it's renewable. It comes down the river every year. We're fine, we're fine, we're fine. And we were given kind of automatic credit to count that as a continuously available supply for 100 years. And now we're facing potential shortage on the Colorado River, and that issue hasn't been addressed in the designations yet. And so I think we'll probably see, we'll see in the next couple years, ADWR start to address that with our water providers. So it's another area where we do have a real problem we need to solve. So what Surprise is doing about it is, sorry, I'm kind of skipping ahead, trying to model what do we think our Colorado River shortage is going to be, which is hard because the Bureau of Reclamation hasn't given us a number. They just threw 5 alternatives out there. We're like, could be one of these 5. Good luck analyzing this 400-page document. We don't know. And that's what's stressful for everybody. The water providers, the residents, that's what's stressful right now, is the uncertainty. We have great partnerships with the CAP who have been able to help us break down those 5 alternatives. And so what we're all planning for is, starting next year, we might take a 20% cut to our Colorado River water, and we might take an 80% cut to our Colorado River water. So we have to plan to 80%. And that is what we're doing. So again, like I mentioned for Surprise specifically, we've got a really nice, healthy water portfolio, but we may take a shortage on Colorado River water, which for us will impact growth. That will be the first thing you see impacted in Phoenix. And that'll, take a variety of, it'll look different, right, across the valley, because each provider has a different portfolio and is at a different stage in build out. And so, so that might look a little bit different across the valley, but that's why I can stand up here and say with a straight face, like, your tap is not going to go dry next year. There are other levers in place to make sure, and growth is obviously the biggest one, because our number one commitment is to our existing customers and the health and safety of the people that currently reside here and support our economy. So I do agree that it's doom and gloom, but I also think that it's not, we're not at that point where it's like time to move and time to panic. It's time to get to work, and that's what my industry is trying to do.
I've had the fun of doing a commissioner's public report before. That was fun. Do they have to do the assured water supply? My question is, for the rental home communities where they say, we're not selling them, we're just leasing them. Do they have to do a commissioner's public, do they have to have 100-year?
They do not.
That's what my thought was, because
Yeah.
if you and I have 5 acres, we want to put in 6 homes, man, that's a lot of paper, we do a public report. What if we just put in a couple 100 condos instead, we'll just lease them out? We can
Yep.
suck as much water as we want, and that's what I was getting at before about the unregulated things, where maximum density makes sense if you're on Manhattan Island or someplace. Here out in Egypt, where they're building as dense as they can and going, really? You're going with this because people don't want yards thing? It's no, they're doing for maximum.
So yes, the build for rent community, kind of multifamily community, if they're not in a designated provider service area, they do not have to get that certificate and pull that public report. They can build. So that is true, and the state legislature has been proposing bills to address that for the last probably 3 years. And so far, none of the bills that have been proposed have passed for various reasons. There's been actual issues with the bills. They need to rework them and make them make a little more sense with respect to our existing law. But I do see that is something that at least our state legislature is aware of and is working towards addressing.
Your water percentages were for the state, not for this Phoenix
That's
area.
correct.
Because we do get a lot of our water from the Verde and the Salt, the Northeast.
Yes.
And it's no coincidence that every CEO, CFO, and COO lives up here in Troon, Cave Creek, Carefree, North Scottsdale, where the water comes from.
Yep.
And Buckeye, Dallas, and Goodyear, that's whose wells are going to run dry to first. You build as many more AI, everything you want, and pools and surf parks and whatever else you want. Well,
Changing the
So
subject.
I can't speculate on the future, but I'm here
yeah,
to
if
tell
you
you
move,
what I
if
do.
you move north and east closer to the water. And Colorado's great for western Arizona. I don't think it helps me sitting here.
Changing the subject just a touch. When you were talking about health, Has there been any thought to the fluoride that we're putting in our water? Are we going to keep doing it? Are we removing it? What's the philosophy or the thought?
It's, yeah, fluoride is typically, been something, fluoride in the water has been in place since what, like the 40s,
Yeah,
I
a
think?
long time. But
There is,
discovering new things
yes,
that are
there
not so
is
good.
an effort afoot at the state legislature to stop, to basically prohibit water providers from adding fluoride to the water. So yeah, that's also an issue that's being worked on. I don't know what the outcome is today, but it's, yeah, there's some folks at the state level that are also concerned about that and working on it. And not every water provider does add fluoride, so we got asked that question recently through like a public records request, and we're like, no, we don't have fluoride. Like, who does anymore? And then we, oh shit, some of our other neighbor cities. Okay, never mind. So yeah. All right, so let's talk about some solutions. We've established we have like lots of water challenges. So what's currently being worked on to address them? So Colorado River policy is something that it's not at the water provider level to solve this problem. All we can do is react to the situation as it's brought down to us and plan for it. Okay, so speaking in my shoes that I wear every day, my job, I can't influence what the Bureau of Reclamation is going to do and what our state negotiators are doing, but what I can do is plan for the worst. And so I mentioned that a little bit, that on the one hand, we're doing real analysis on, the water that we're serving today versus our Colorado River supply. What happens if that gets shorted? Well, because it's not the only supply that we have available to us, it doesn't, an 80% cut to our Colorado River water doesn't mean an 80% cut to the water we can serve. So that's good. We are able to, count our reclaimed water as a renewable source because we're doing that aquifer replenishment continuously. So that's one aspect. And then the other aspect is that for our community, we're not totally built out. And so we're already starting to have conversations with our council about, hey, we may get to the point where you have to say no to final plats, or really rezones. I think that's where their rights come into play, is that rezone. So those are the conversations we're having, where we're explaining to our council that a Colorado River shortage of the worst kind really limits our growth to, we probably won't be able to grow beyond where we're at today. So that's another way that we're planning for the future. And then another way that we're planning for the future is trying to prove out new supplies. So there are other water supplies we can go after. I listed a couple of them here. None of them are cheap. None of them are at our doorstep today. So that's just a reality. If we want to continue growing and driving the economy of Arizona and Phoenix, we have to invest in new supplies. And so there are a variety of efforts to do that. So the Bartlett Dam supply, has anybody heard about the Bartlett Dam project? So this is an SRP project. They are proposing to raise Bartlett Dam by 100 feet. And what that'll do is, number one, they've been losing capacity because of the accumulation of sediment over the years, so they gotta restore that capacity. But number two, they can raise the dam high enough to where they restore the capacity and then also create additional storage space for some of the Verde River water that spills over in a wet year. And so they're like, hey, this is water that hasn't been appropriated, it doesn't have a water right attached to it. If we build a bigger dam, get all the valley cities to chip in, then we can store more water and actually increase our local water supply, which is a good thing for us to be less reliant on Colorado River. So the Bartlett Dam project is a multi-year project. It does require congressional approval to construct a dam or raise a dam or whatever, make any changes to a dam. And so we probably won't see this supply available to us until 2031, but it's in the works. There are 24 partners on that project, and when I say partners, I mean cost-sharing entities who will then get water out of cost-sharing the dam. So pretty much any provider, most of the providers in the valley, except for maybe a couple small water, like private providers, are part of that project. For the West Valley, that's also an exciting one because you can then move some SRP water off project, out of their historical service area, because it's considered a supply that wasn't previously being used appropriately. So Bartlett's an exciting one because you don't get to see a lot of new dam construction in our lifetime. Like it's like we're done building dams. That was like, you know, the 50s and 60s. What was your question?
Is like Queen Creek, Santan area a part of that?
Of the Bartlett project?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because they're kind of facing the same.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes.
Yes.
Queen Creek and the West Valley, very similar in terms of being on the fringe of the aquifer. Yes, they are part of that project, and they should stand to get a good chunk of it.
And when you say, like, because I mean, we have a lot of clients that are going to the new build, so we need to, like, if we're going to Toll Brothers or Pulte or anything like that, we need to check to see how they have designated the water supply.
Yeah.
Or what would be your advice on that?
What you want to know is, have they obtained a certificate of assured water supply already,
Okay.
or are they in a water provider service area that is already designated?
Can you say that one more time?
Yes, please.
So have they obtained a certificate of assured water supply, CAWS, or is the water provider serving that neighborhood a designated provider? Now, if the subdivision has already platted, it's already subdivided,
Yeah.
then they've already satisfied that requirement.
Okay. Either way.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Is there any like loopholes? Like if they don't have the 100-year and it's designated, like kind of back to what he was saying that we need to be concerned about.
I mean, he mentioned the loophole, which is like the build for rent communities, but that's probably not who you're selling to.
Right.
You're selling to single family residential.
Correct. Yes. Not to renters. Yeah.
Yeah. So the loophole would be if it is like a rural residential area that didn't technically subdivide. So maybe a wildcat subdivision where they had a 10-acre lot, split it into two. Maybe they took the right side of that lot, split it into 5. We see a lot of those on the fringes of the valley as well. Those, you know, they basically have been able to do these little ticky-tacky divisions of land to where eventually there's a bunch of homes all on a shared well. Those are the areas that don't have the water provider assurances. So the way you can verify this too, if you're ever like, I don't believe them, I want to fact check that they have their certificate, is that every final plat map
Yes.
will have either the certificate number or the designated provider's provider number. And it's like, it's on the plat. It's a special kind of area that says, what does it say, Justin?
It's a certificate of 100-year assured water supply, so you'll see that at the very top, and then it'll have the designation number or the cost number underneath it. And then you can take it to like ADWR and look up that cost number too to see like when it was issued or how old it is, if that is relevant to your information.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna go back on those contracts tonight.
Okay, so a couple more water supplies. Actually, how are we doing on time? We're almost running out, aren't we?
Yeah.
Nobody's asleep though.
That's good.
No.
Thank God.
If you have a private well, you're in good shape. If it's a shared well, read your shared well agreement. If it's a private water company, be scared and do your homework. They're not all terrible, but they have been known to just go out of town and leave everybody high and dry.
Do your homework is a great lesson, but that is what you guys do, right? You guys do a lot of homeworking for the people that are buying. So Harquahala groundwater reserves. This is a water supply that we will probably see before we even see the Bartlett supply. It's another one that Queen Creek is actually investing in. And the Harquahala water is a groundwater reserve west of us that was identified in probably the 80s for importation into the Phoenix area. I will not get into the politics of importing groundwater. I realize there are concerns there because you're just going from one groundwater source to another. So I get that, but that is an option that we have legally available to us. Advanced water purification. This would be the process of taking our already very clean effluent and making it even cleaner so that we can serve it as a potable water supply. So Arizona has been a leader in using reclaimed water. Throughout the country we've been a leader, but we have been historically hesitant to go the final step and turn it into drinking water. But the reality is there are actually quite a few projects in California and other parts of the country that are supplementing their supplies with treated effluent.
Don't we have a system here in Arizona, I think it's northwest side of town, that does reclamation of water, that you can go and tour the facility and they give you a glass of water to drink?
Yes, you're probably talking about the Scottsdale one that's like just up the road,
I
right?
don't think it's in Scottsdale.
Oh,
I think
okay.
it's somewhere else,
Okay.
but it could be, I don't know.
So a couple years ago, Scottsdale did a pilot project at one of their wastewater plants. Now their wastewater plant was already doing ultrafiltration because it was funded by like 9 or 10 golf courses, and the golf courses are like, your wastewater's too salty, get rid of the salt. So they paid for a massive upgrade so that they could have like the best golf course in the valley, like the greenest grass.
Of course they did.
It's fitting, and I love it. I love that story. But because of that plant and how it was kind of already doing this ultra purification process, it meant that Scottsdale didn't have to put in a ton. Like it was already kind of set up to be the perfect pilot project to prove out a potable drinking water supply. So they did do a pilot project. When you took a tour, you were offered a glass of their treated wastewater. Yes, I have had it. It's delicious. And I have, and it honestly, it's not going into their distribution system yet because it was just a pilot project. And so, you got to be able to prove to the state and the EPA that like, here's all the data that shows there's all the drinking water contaminants that are already regulated in our regular supply are not present in this supply. And so that's kind of how we start, is like research and investing in new technologies, and then we do pilot projects, and that's why it takes forever, but it's all in the spirit of making sure that if we're going to do something that's really never been done before, that we're doing it the best, most defensible, transparent way possible.
When is that like on track to be utilized for that pilot?
That I don't know. I don't know. Back to your question though, the North Phoenix project, the
Yeah.
Cave Creek Treatment
Creek
Plant project,
Treatment
I think that's the one you were referring to. They're planning on being online by 2030.
Correct, yeah.
And now you're asking me to speak on other water providers' facts, which puts me in a really scary place. I'm just kidding. I'm happy to share what I know, and if I get it wrong, sorry.
Since you're an expert on all of them, about that Trace Rios one, that's an amazing
The
area.
Trace Rios, the treatment plant in the
Yeah, that's an
wetland
amazing area by itself.
Mhm.
But I think everything there is just recharging the underground aquifer, correct?
I'm gonna lob that one over to you. I think you
There-
know more about Trace Rios.
Yeah, so there's multiple things happening at Trace Rios. We are, there's multiple cities that are all transferring their effluent to that treatment facility off 91st Street. It's working as, one is recharge. It's also working as a habitat restoration because it's going through the Salt and Gila River area, which was devastated by a lot of the agricultural and the groundwater pumping that was happening prior to 1980. And so this is hopefully to bring back that riparian area. And so it does have that continuous flow down the Salt River and the Gila where it connects into the Agua Fria. And then some of that flow is still diverted into the Gila. Some of it's sent to the Palo Verde Nuclear Power Plant.
And if anyone wants to see wildlife here in Phoenix, just go down there.
It's gorgeous.
Just go down there. Don't be scared because of one mountain lion, but I've seen pelicans, I've seen all kinds of, you go in the desert, oh yeah.
And
That's an amazing area.
What is it called?
91st Avenue and Southern.
Trace Rios.
It says
Wetland?
turn right or left on Southern. There is no Southern there, but
Yeah.
put in 91st and Southern, and there you are. On the east side, my wife passed last year, but she was with Habitat for all the wildlife things. They built wildlife structures over there. We saw golden eagle over there.
Wow.
I've never seen anything so big in my life. It looked like a pterodactyl. I'm like, what? Oh, it's a goldie. She was that wildlife lady. She knew all of them. They have like a 10-foot wingspan. So yeah, if you want to see some cool nature, go to that Trace Rios at 91st Avenue Southern.
Awesome.
And
Well, out of respect for your
I
time.
haven't drank the water there yet.
Huh? No, not
I
yet.
didn't drink the water there yet.
Out of respect for your time, we do have 3 minutes left, so, ask me questions if you have any, we'll kind of wrap up.
Saltwater desalination, is it ever gonna happen here?
Yes.
Okay.
I hope so. I think so.
Okay.
Okay, so that is another one of our supply solutions. So we have an agency at the state called WIFA, Water Infrastructure Finance Authority, and they're basically like the bank for water projects. Their whole job is to help fund water projects. So a couple years ago, the governor established a long-term water augmentation fund. I believe it was under the previous governor, and set aside a bunch of money to basically, and the task was just go find Arizona's next supply, with not a little direction, not a lot of direction. So the folks at WIFA are brilliant, and by the way, all their board meetings are public, so you can watch them. It's very exciting, and it's also very boring. Because they're talking about finances, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. But so WIFA's job is to find a new water supply. So what they've done so far is they basically put out a request for proposals, and then they spent several months trying to vet those requests. And so there's, I think, 4, am I right? 4 that they are going to continue investigating, proving out the feasibility of, and I think at least 2 of those are desalination related projects. So, so yeah, that's something that like no one water provider can tackle that on their own. And so we do need the state, the leadership of the state to help us identify some of those resources that, are good opportunities, but like no one user can do that on their own. So yeah. The stuff going on at WIFA is super exciting, but it is like, it's gonna take a long time, I think. I think that with the WIFA supply from that fund is probably not one we'll see in the next 5 to 10 years. I'm thinking probably 15 to 20, realistically. So, all these supplies take time to prove out, and they'll all take a different amount of time. So that's the work that we have ahead of us, I suppose. Any other questions?
So, like Taiwan Semiconductor and companies like that utilize a lot of water,
Mhm.
do they have certain expectations on regulations and, input versus output?
I can't speak to TSMC specifically. I do know that Phoenix, as our biggest water provider and biggest city in this area, Phoenix has a very healthy portfolio. They would not have taken on that project if they couldn't serve it. That being said, Phoenix is also really reliant on Colorado River water. So yeah, I'm uncertain in terms of what the expectations are for TSMC. I believe they're doing a lot of on-site reuse.
That's what I heard.
Mhm.
Yeah. So and their reuse has to be ultra pure because of the chips and the technology. So yeah, a lot of reuse. What else was I going to say? What else is there to say about TSMC? Oh, Phoenix, just that Phoenix is a designated provider. And so at least it's not happening off of groundwater supplies that aren't being replenished. So we also know that whatever Phoenix is serving, if it's either renewable supply or if it's groundwater, it is being replenished because legally it has to. Any question? It's 101. I gotta let you go.
I just have a quick question. Do you, just because I've been getting this from clients, do you see there being restrictions on putting pools in like 10 years?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I really don't know. Arizona historically has no appetite for regulating their homeowners in that way. And so I get asked this question all the time. I'm like, well, do you want to be regulated? Like, if that's what you want, like, sure, we'll put it in place. But so I don't know. I don't actually know that would solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go back to the first slide, the municipal uses, there, we could remove all the grass in Phoenix and it wouldn't solve the problem. It wouldn't even touch it. So everybody does need to chip in, but there's not one solution that is going to make it all better. And so it feels weird to say you can't have this unless we're doing a really holistic approach. If you can't have this, then they can't have that. Everybody's chipping in. And so that, to me, takes some leadership at the state level. I think, you can see that in California where they've put in certain conservation rules and restrictions. Like that happened at a state level because those areas were at risk of like having their physical water supply unavailable to them. So yeah, I could see it, but it's probably why we haven't seen it yet, despite the fact that we've been in a 30-year drought, is because we haven't until now truly seen like shortage of our municipal water supplies. If we see it, next year will be the first year. So then every utility has to make some decisions about how they're gonna manage their supply.
It seems like I heard something, I don't know if I'm just dreaming it or what, but that we're actually using less water now than we did back in the 60s.
That is true.
True story.
That is true. And a lot of that water usage was driven by agricultural pumping. So ironically, we've put more people in this place, but the land use now is less intensive than agriculture. And so just by changing the land use from ag to urban, we actually see that water use has decreased. But
is that good or bad? That's the question.
Yeah, well,
It's
it's like we still know that we have a limit, right? And so at what point do we reach that limit is the question. So hopefully I informed you, hopefully I didn't scare you, hopefully I didn't make it sound like everything was too rosy, because it's not. But I appreciate you guys. What's that?
So the turf removal, what do you guys?
Oh yeah, turf removal. So a lot of utilities have turf removal rebates. So if you're removing real grass at your house or at a HOA area, they'll offer money to cash for grass is what some other programs are called.
Wait, turf removal?
Turf removal. Turf is the term turf refers to living grass.
Okay.
Yes, I get that a lot. There's a lot of misconception about versus astroturf,
AstroTurf,
which is your fake
right.
grass. We're fine with that. Go for it. So yeah, there are a lot of grass removal rebates offered by the municipal water providers. So go check your water provider's website and see if that's something you're interested in.
And what is high volume considered to be?
Okay, so the high volume water user restrictions, this is an ordinance that a city can put in place, and at least 12 cities in the valley have put this in place to combat super high industrial water users like TSMC. Yeah, exactly. So data centers, bottling plants. We've seen a lot of really intensive industrial uses come into the valley, and it gives the water providers, it scares us, because we've been doing all this long range planning, and then one high user can come in and wipe out the available water we have to serve. And so high water user, really it is water users whose use is in the hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of gallons per day. It's a very, very high use. We're not trying to regulate grocery stores or anything.
Question about, we have the nuclear power plant, which is supposed to use a lot of water, but it's in the desert.
Yeah.
How is that? Is they basically reuse the water?
Yeah, so they're actually receiving the reclaimed water from Phoenix and some of the other cities.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a very cool
That's
partnership.
the only nuclear power plant that I know is
Yep.
actually inland.
Yes. Do you know how much of their cooling water comes from reclaimed water?
I think it's about 80 to 90% of it that comes from reclaimed, and they recycle that water at least 4 to 5 times within their systems to keep that plant cool. And so they're extremely efficient with their use of that water. And that is a unique portion about the nuclear power plant, the Palo Verde nuclear power plant, is that it is landlocked. It is the only nuclear power plant that is completely surrounded by land.
And what they do with the water, they dump it somewhere?
They
There's
have
several
ponds.
Yeah, there's several different ways. So they'll put it out to large distribution basins to help release the salts that might be in there, and then they can gather that salt and then get rid of that, and then they'll release some of it back into the environment after filtration.
It's not contaminated by the nuclear, any nuclear, it's just used to cool.
Very good.
Mhm.
Yeah, good
Mhm.
point.
Why then can they only use it 4 times?
Because the amount of, it's called TDS, the total dissolved solids, starts to increase. Because when water evaporates, only water goes, but all those salts stay into the water, so that concentration gets saltier and saltier and saltier, to the point where it's saltier than the ocean, and it becomes inefficient to run because it starts to clog the system.
Got it.
Isn't that what happened in Awatuki?
Yeah,
And all the golf courses ended up closing because they were all white, because it was all salt.
all the
everywhere.
salt deposits, yeah.
It was a disaster.
That's why Scottsdale paid
Right.
to get their filtrations nice and clean for their golf
Exactly.
course. Yeah.
You guys, I really appreciate
Thank you.
all the questions and allowing me to come and have a conversation with you.
You-
Thank you.